You are in your room, you have your headphones on, and you are pacing. You are walking back and forth, completely lost in a conversation that is never going to happen with people who might not even exist. You are feeling real physical adrenaline over a completely fake scenario. You might be winning an argument against your boss, saving someone's life, or giving a deeply emotional interview to a talk show host. And if someone walked in right now, you would stop dead in your tracks, absolutely mortified. Most of us do this, but for a specific group of people, this isn't just a passing thought or a quirky habit. It is an addiction. And there is a hidden, slightly terrifying neurological reason why your brain literally cannot tell the difference between these imaginary worlds and real life. But to understand the glitch in your brain's hardware, we first have to understand the deeply human reason you started doing this in the first place. Let's get one thing straight. Mind wandering is perfectly normal. In fact, between 30 and 50% of our waking thoughts are just random, spontaneous drifting. Normal daydreaming is like your brain's screensaver. It flicks on when you are bored, and it disappears the second you touch the mouse. But what we are talking about today is fundamentally different. It is a psychological phenomenon identified in 2002 called maladaptive daydreaming. And it represents a massive shift from fleeting thoughts to a structured, addictive immersion in alternate realities. The paradox here is fascinating. Why do we actively choose to spend hours trapped in our own heads instead of living our actual lives? It sounds highly irrational, but to your brain, it is the most logical survival mechanism on Earth. Think of your mind as a psychological thermostat. When the real world gets too cold, too lonely, too stressful, or too neglectful, your brain kicks on the heat. These fake scenarios are your brain's ultimate safe haven. They function as a compensatory mechanism. You are using fantasy to bridge the agonizing gap between your actual self and your idealized self. In the real world, you might feel powerless, awkward, or overlooked. But in your head, you are the main character. You have power, you have success, and most importantly, you have companionship. This condition is surprisingly common, affecting about 2.5% of the general population. But the numbers skyrocket to almost 9% if you are a student or a young adult. It is incredibly concentrated in the 20 to 35-year-old demographic. And psychologists believe this is directly tied to the crushing pressure of identity formation and life decision-making. When the pressure of figuring out who you are in the real world becomes too heavy, creating a fake world where you already have it all figured out becomes incredibly seductive. But building these intricate alternate realities requires tools. And if you do this, you know exactly what those tools are. Over 80% of immersive daydreamers report doing something called kinesthetic synchronization. That is the clinical term for the repetitive physical movements you do while you daydream. Pacing, rocking, throwing a ball against a wall, or gesturing with your hands. From the outside, it looks strange. But internally, it acts as a form of self-hypnosis. Think of it like revving a car engine in neutral. The physical movement keeps your mental RPMs high, maintaining the dissociative state and shielding you from real-world distractions. And then there is the music. Music acts as the emotional soundtrack to the fantasy. It is the fuel that triggers the episode and dictates the exact emotional genre of the scenario you are about to experience. But why does this start? For many, the architecture of this fantasy world is laid down in childhood. These immersive scenarios are frequently linked to adverse childhood experiences, like neglect, family dysfunction, or intense bullying. If you grow up in an environment where affection is scarce or reality is threatening, your imagination becomes your panic room. Children facing extreme adversity rely on fantasy as a literal survival mechanism. They use it to manufacture the love and validation that is completely absent in their physical environment. This creates a massive psychological void known as a belongingness deficit. People who create these fake scenarios consistently report deep feelings of social isolation. To compensate for this lonely reality, they cultivate parasocial relationships. They form intense, one-sided emotional bonds with media figures or completely original fictional characters. And this leads to a subtle, heartbreaking form of learned helplessness. You start proactively choosing these imaginary friends over real people. Why? Because the internal world is entirely predictable. Imaginary friends don't text back late. They don't judge you, and they never abandon you. But this brings us to the ultimate mystery. Why does it feel so intensely real? Why do you literally cry real tears or feel your heart racing over a scenario you invented 5 minutes ago? This is where we have to look at the hidden, microscopic wiring of your brain. And the culprit behind all of this is something called the default mode network, or the DMN. The DMN is the neurological architecture behind self-reflection and internal thinking. Think of it like the background apps running on your smartphone. In a typical brain, when you need to focus on a real-world task, those background apps automatically close so you can direct your energy outward. But in maladaptive daydreamers, the DMN is hyperconnected and wildly overactive. The background apps simply refuse to close. It becomes incredibly difficult to transition back to a task-positive present state. But it gets even crazier. There is a specific region of your brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This is the area responsible for integrating sensory information. When this region becomes dysregulated, it begins to blur the lines between internal simulation and external reality. It is like having a VR headset permanently strapped to your consciousness. Your brain is internally generating the simulation, but it is processing it as actual lived sensory experience. Your nervous system literally cannot tell the difference between the fake scenario and real life. This is why this phenomenon rarely travels alone. About 75% of people who experience this meet the criteria for at least 3 other psychological disorders. There is a massive 77 to 80% overlap with ADHD, specifically the inattentive type. But while ADHD involves a difficulty sustaining focus, maladaptive daydreaming is characterized by an intense hyperfocus on the fantasy. There is also a huge overlap with OCD. Over 50% of cases feature this, which perfectly explains the compulsive, addictive urge to daydream and the ritualistic nature of the pacing. We also see this heavily in adults with autism spectrum disorder. About 42% report immersive daydreaming, often using these highly structured narrative scripts as a way to safely process confusing social information. And of course, depression and anxiety are constantly present. They act as both the trigger and the consequence of the daydreaming. And that is the ultimate trap. This creates a vicious, unbreakable cycle of dissociative absorption. You slip into the fantasy because you need temporary relief from negative emotions. You become completely indifferent to external stimuli just to maintain that inward focus. But because you just spent 4 hours pacing in your room, you neglect your real-world duties. Your relationships suffer. Your work suffers. This neglect leads to a crushing wave of shame and guilt. And what does your brain instinctively do when it feels overwhelmed by shame? It retreats right back into the fantasy for comfort. It is a psychological Ouroboros. The cure becomes the poison. But there is a way to break the loop. Because this condition is so newly recognized, it isn't formally in the DSM-5 yet, but clinicians use tools like the Maladaptive Daydreaming Scale to measure the severity of the immersion and the yearning. Treatment doesn't start by just telling you to stop daydreaming. That never works. Interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy and schema therapy go straight for the root. They ask one vital question: what unmet emotional need is this daydream trying to fulfill? Sometimes, breaking the cycle requires using therapies like EMDR to process the underlying trauma that caused you to build the panic room in the first place. In some case studies, pharmacology like SSRIs have shown success in quieting that compulsive, OCD-like urge to slip into the alternate reality. But on a daily, practical level, the most powerful weapon against the fantasy is mindfulness and grounding. Grounding exercises literally force the default mode network to disengage. They force your brain to take off the VR headset and interact with the physical, sensory data of the room you are standing in. They interrupt the hypnotic flow of the episode. If you do this, you need to understand something deeply important. You are not crazy, and you are not broken. You are just wearing a highly advanced suit of psychological armor that you built a very long time ago to survive. Your brain figured out a brilliant way to give you the success, the love, and the power that the real world temporarily denied you. The goal isn't to kill your imagination. Your creativity is a gift. The goal is to stop living in the draft and start living in the final product. The goal is to slowly make your real life so safe and so fulfilling that you no longer need to escape it.